It started with a box old, worn down by time, and covered in a thin coat of dust. It turned up by chance in the attic of a house in Virginia Beach, the very place where Edgar Cayce lived for much of his life. That city has long held whispers that Cayce left behind more than just his famous prophecies. The box was unmarked, no name or label. Inside was a cloth-wrapped folder and an envelope marked to be opened only after 70 years. Someone gave in to curiosity. Someone opened it. Now the contents quietly move through the darker corners of the internet, deleted, re-uploaded, vanishing again. Some people swear they saw it once. Others call it a hoax. But those who've spent years listening to Cayce's voice, who know his steady calm and unusual insight, believe it's the real thing, an interview never meant to be heard by the public. The recording, supposedly made in 1944, just months before his death, is a transcript of a talk between Cayce and someone whose identity remains unknown. Not a reporter, not a scientist, but someone who asked the right questions and wasn't afraid of the answers. The topic, the 7 stages after death, which Cayce believed every soul journeys through after leaving the physical world. But the most unsettling part is that he doesn't just talk about death. He talks about what's coming, our future, yours and mine. Everything you think you know about death is a mask, a trick the transcript opens. The real story starts after, and no one's ready for it. Cayce called the first stage transitional. Here he says the soul wakes up. It's like being in a dream you can't quite get out of. Every move feels slow, like walking through water. Most souls at this level don't realize they've died. They're drawn to the light, but trapped by the echo of their own fears. Some stay stuck here for decades. Then comes the second level reflection. This is where you experience your life all over again, but through the eyes of others. You feel the pain you caused and the joy you gave. Cayce called this stage both the hardest and the most essential. It's where regret is born, or where the soul fades into forgetfulness. The third stage is awareness. Here, the soul begins to grasp how existence is structured. This is where you meet what Cayce described as beings of light. They don't talk with words, they share knowledge through images, energy, and memory. Some souls return from this level, changed like dreamers waking up with purpose. Cayce himself was one of them. These people often become mediums, prophets, or visionaries. But beyond that, Cayce said not everyone goes. What lies ahead is off-limits for most. Why Cayce didn't say, or maybe he knew words couldn't do it justice. The fourth level is where things get truly disturbing, not because of hell, but because of truth. He called it the mirror corridor. Here you don't just see your life, you see who you could have been. And this isn't symbolic. You directly experience every path you didn't take in life. Forgiving instead of holding a grudge, taking revenge instead of walking away becoming a monk, or committing a crime you only ever imagined. Each version of you is real. These selves live on at the spiritual level, and every decision creates a branching energy, a structure that exists in a shared spiritual field. In that corridor, Cayce said you understand that God isn't a judge. He's a witness, and you're the only one who can judge yourself. Many souls, he said, fall apart here. They beg to go back. The weight of knowing is too much. But some push forward. Then comes the fifth stage, infinite time. Time stops being a line. Past, present, and future blend into one. Cayce said this is where he received his visions. He didn't see the future as a movie, but as an ocean filled with currents of possibility. In that sea, some events show up as thick, tangled knots, nearly unavoidable. One such knot, a huge rupture sometime in the mid-21st century. He didn't explain what it was, but his descriptions were eerily vivid: cities without power, people wearing white masks, children born remembering past lives, entire countries fading from maps, not because of war, but because their meaning evaporated. He believed this shift would reflect how humanity handles its collective third-stage awareness. Cayce said that just like individuals, the world itself is a soul, and it too has to pass through its own stages after death. And if humanity really is standing at the third level right now, then what's ahead is either awakening or losing ourselves entirely. According to Cayce, the sixth level begins what he called the shedding of the shadow. It's not destruction, it's release. The soul starts peeling away everything that isn't truly it: fear, anger, jealousy, ego. It's like peeling back the layers until only the purest light remains. And only in this state, stripped to its core, does the soul first make contact with something greater, call it God the Source, or even its own higher self from beyond time. Then comes the seventh level. And here Cayce went silent. The transcript cuts off mid-thought, then skips 2 whole pages before one line appears: "I cannot speak about it. I am not allowed." But who forbade him? And why? What is it about this final level that's off limits? Some researchers think it marks the end of the soul's cycle, a step into something completely outside human understanding. Others believe Cayce saw something so overwhelming that it could unravel anyone not fully prepared. That's where things start to get really interesting, because from this point on, the interview takes a turn. Cayce begins talking about what he calls the future's spiritual traps. And these, he warns, aren't about tech or disasters. The real danger is forgetting the soul. He says humanity faces a kind of repeating test, something that happens every few thousand years. Civilizations either wake up or they disappear into the void. He names Atlantis, ancient Sumer, pre-dynastic Egypt. All of them, he claims, once knew about the 7 levels, but eventually they made the choice to forget. Not by mistake, but on purpose. Because the truth is heavy. When a person knows they're eternal, they either become light or they break. Cayce repeats again and again, the future isn't fixed. It's made moment by moment. And right now the world is choosing go deeper into a soulless, tech-driven world, or return to something ancient, something true. He predicts that by the middle of the 21st century, a new kind of human will appear. Not physically different, but radically changed in how they see time, energy, life, and death. These people will be directly plugged into awareness like Cayce was. They'll remember past lives, feel other people's pain like it's their own, and see future events before they unfold. And because of that, he says there will be a massive effort to shut them down. He warns that knowledge itself will become a threat not to the world, but to the systems running it. He outlines 3 waves of resistance this new generation will face. First comes ridicule. They'll be laughed at, dismissed as lunatics, cultists, scammers. Then comes isolation. Institutions will be set up to monitor and help them framed as science, framed as care. Finally, temptation. Offers of fame, power, wealth, if they agree to give up their spirit. Cayce says only those who realize they are not their bodies, not their names or jobs, but energy flow, consciousness beyond time, only they will be able to make it through all 3. Then, in a roundabout way, he circles back to the 7th level, not with facts, but with an image. A door that can't be forced open. One that only appears when the soul stops wanting to pass through. Because the desire itself is rooted in fear. And beyond that door, he says, there is no shape, no sound, no meaning. Just silence. And in that silence, everything. The interviewer asks, "Have you been there?" No reply. Just silence. Then Cayce says quietly, "I almost didn't come back." Some believe that after this session, Cayce's health took a sudden dive, that something inside him broke when he tried to explain the unexplainable. It's said that's when he began working on his final prophecies, the ones never published. the ones supposedly found in that same dusty old box. The final pages yellowed, the ink faded with time. Some claim Cayce didn't even write them himself, that they were dictated in a trance, and that afterward he had no memory of saying them. It all starts with one simple phrase. When you hear the voice from within, don't argue. It's older than you. What follows are fragments, images, symbols, almost poetic lines. Critics call it nonsense. But those who've explored altered states of awareness insist there's a deep truth buried in these strange words, a kind of encrypted message that can't be unlocked with logic alone. One haunting piece reads, "In the year when water touches the sky and the earth begins to sing, a crack will open between worlds. What comes through will not be the dead, but the forgotten. They are not evil, but they are hungry. Not for flesh, for knowledge. What does water touches the sky even mean? Who are the forgotten?" Some believe this is a prediction of climate collapse. Others see it as a metaphor for information overload when the soul drowns in data and loses its way. The most unsettling part of all this might be the idea of a crack, a thin space between worlds, where the barrier between the living and those souls trapped at the 4th or 5th levels starts to blur. Cayce wrote that these stuck souls aren't out searching for bodies. They're looking for awareness, for a mind they can speak through, act through influence. He predicted that as we moved deeper into the 21st century, more and more people would begin to hear voices, have dreams that come true, feel things they can't explain. They won't be sick, but they'll be labeled that way, diagnosed, medicated, separated. Not because something's wrong with them, but because they've become a doorway standing between this world and the next. Then the text takes a sharp turn into a prophecy barely anyone talks about anymore. Most printed versions have the line scratched out. When the 3rd continent disappears, it begins. But which continent? Some wonder Australia, Greenland, or maybe it's symbolic. Maybe it's a spiritual space that's fading. Some believe Cayce was speaking about Europe's soul, its loss of meaning, of belief, of connection to its roots. He tied it to the silence of the churches and the failure of science to offer answers. He wrote, "When scientists talk like priests, and priests like bureaucrats listen only to the children, they still remember." Suddenly you realize this is about returning to something ancient, remembering something we knew before we were even born. Cayce believed that every child under 5 still remembers traveling through the levels. But that memory gets erased by school, by fear, by social rules. And if a generation ever arrives that keeps that memory, he said the world would be transformed in a single lifetime. The final page of the document was written on thick, nearly parchment-like paper. The handwriting was shaky but legible. It was signed E.C. and contained just a few lines. If you're reading this, it means you've already heard the call. Now you have a choice. Just remember, knowledge changes you. Forever. That wasn't just a closing thought. It was a warning. Right after that line, the story goes, the person who found the box vanished. Some say he went to Tibet. Others say he was found dead, body deformed in strange ways. But most researchers say nothing. They refuse to comment or claim they simply can't. So what was this really all about? According to Cayce, the 7 levels aren't some metaphor or belief system. They're a map, a real one. A guide through what happens after death, but also through life. Cayce claimed that dying doesn't send you somewhere new. It reveals what's already inside you. Each level exists while we're alive. You can live stuck in level 1, drifting through life like it's a foggy dream. Or you might reach level 2 and feel someone else's pain like your own. You might move into level 3 and start to notice the deep web of connections tying everything together. But going beyond that, you have to be ready. That's what Cayce's final message was about, a time when the doors would open not for the crowds, but for those who remember. Not believe. Remember. These people won't belong to any religion, won't chant mantras, won't gather in temples. They'll be regular folks, a bus driver, a cashier, a single mom. But they'll start hearing each other, not with words, but through dreams, synchronicities, unexplained feelings. And they'll just know. Death isn't the end, it's the start. The future isn't a straight line, it's a mirror. The truth isn't out there, it's us, without fear. Most importantly, they'll realize this: we're not alone. We never have been. The souls who've made it through all the levels are still close by, not as ghosts, but as light, as warmth, as nudges from your conscience. When you're sitting in silence and suddenly sense you're not by yourself, it's not your imagination. It's a signal. Those who've studied Cayce's writings believe he left behind more than just prophecies. He left a key, a map, and a warning. But not for everyone, only for those ready to let go of the false world to remember the real one. This kind of message won't show up on the news. You won't find it in academic journals. It gets deleted from YouTube, but it survives in memories, in hidden copies, in people like you. And now that you've read it, you're not the same. You've crossed a line. And the only question left is this: do you go back to the old dream, or do you keep moving forward? If something in this story stirred something deep inside you, don't just sit with it. Leave a like, not for the algorithms, but as a sign. A quiet way to say, I've awakened. Subscribe if you're ready to keep going. There's more ahead, the kind of truths people don't speak out loud. Share this video with someone you know is ready to hear it, because the time is now. And those who can see, we need to find each other, here, now, together.